a facehugger from Alien.
Good day to you all. Which won't make any sense unless you listen to the last episode. This is the Jefferson Matrix podcast, the pod on a mission to normalise 8-team leagues. Today we are talking AFC East. I am Pete McManus. I'm your host. I'm joined by the wonderful H and the fantastic Ian. How are we, gents?
I'm good. Good day to you, sir.
Day, sir.
That is how I'm starting every pod.
Love it.
Until I stop finding it funny, which will probably be next week. So, right, should we get cracking with the AFC East? Because I'm really interested in a couple of these teams. So
yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So the Bills won the division by the skin of their teeth last year. In 2023, they finished 11-6, having won. I think they win the last 5 or 5 of the last 6 to take the division, which is their 4th straight division title. They then rolled over the Steelers without any problem whatsoever, 31-17 in the wild card, and then, as per usual, lost to the Chiefs, 27-24 in the divisional. In 2024, the bookies have got them at 10.5 wins, but they are favourites for the division just at 17-10. Notable ins in the draft, they brought Keon Coleman in, wide receiver in the second round, which was top of the second round because they traded back. Ray Davis as running back in the 4th. They'd already added Curtis Samuel, MVS, Matt Collins, and then Mitch Trubisky as backup to Josh Allen. So it's another team. I think in the last episode, we were talking about teams with a bit of a mess at wide receiver. They are definitely in the category of all things messy at wide receiver. And that's because they're 1 and 2 from previous years. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are out together with Latavius Murray. Early ADPs, Josh Allen is once again the QB1, having finished there last year and several years now in the past 5. James Cook is the RB14, having finished at 12 last year. Keon Coleman comes in as their highest drafted wide receiver as wide receiver 46, which for an offense run by Josh Allen is kind of unbelievable. Curtis Samuel's in at wide receiver 54, and then Khalil Shakir is in at wide receiver 54. So they're all going, none of them go until after or till the 46th pick or 46th wide receiver pick, and then they all go within the next 8. Kincaid is looking like his main target as tight end 5, having finished as tight end 11 last year. And Dawson Knox has been pushed all the way down to the depths of tight end 35. Where should we start with the Bills? Let's start with Josh Allen, QB1. Everyone's, he's become over the last few years just a go-to. I'm going to take him as the quarterback 1. With the receivers he's got and the lack of Diggs and the lack of Davis, who we did like from time to time, are we worried about Josh Allen finishing as a QB1?
Nope. I'll move it on.
Yeah, a little. Absolutely.
What's becoming more
you don't
relevant,
pick him and I'll pick him instead then.
What's becoming more relevant with these pods is I throw out a question, one of you says yes, the other one says no, and then you both just shut up for about 5 seconds. And I'm like, one of you needs to follow that up with a little bit more background.
Well, I'm hoping that you give your opinion as well, Pete.
Yeah, I can do. And I mean, that was my worry is that I think he's got the running ability. He will score. He will rush. He will score. He will score on the ground. But I think you're bringing in Curtis Samuel, who's never really done it. Khalil Shakir showed bits and pieces last year. Keon Coleman, by all accounts, he looks good coming out of college, but by all accounts has got a long way to go in terms of learning the offense. So I just look at it and go, I'm not saying he won't finish in the top 5 or anything ridiculous like that, but to just like pencil him in or stamp him in as the QB1 feels a bit rich to me. And I think I'm only saying that because I've ended up taking him in a couple of leagues, so now I'm panicking about it.
Well, I've not managed to get him in any leagues so far in any draft this year. And if I'm honest, I'm not that bothered. I think losing Diggs is a massive loss. Gabe Davis, for what he is and the amount of stick we give him, he has his games, doesn't he? Like
Yeah.
Khalil Shakir, 2 years ago, he did have a 1,000-yard season. So he has done it, but he's one of the, they call them gadget guys, don't they? And, you have to specifically draft up weird and wonderful plays just to get him yards. I mean, last year he had 611 yards, caught 39 of 45, played every game. What's that about? Who's interested? I think people take Josh Allen, but Josh Allen's relevant for fantasy because of what he does on the ground. There is a case to be made that this year he might have to do even more on the ground, which means he's even more relevant for you. And he's got even more chance of finishing QB1.
Yeah, possibly. I can see that.
H?
You're not worried, hey?
No, I don't know. There's just something about Josh Allen.
Brilliant. That's great insight. Huh?
Yeah, no, for me, like I know the Bills have obviously had a lot of change. I feel like one of Shakir or Samuel will step up. I think Keon Coleman is a huge red zone target, which, although Allen likes to rush, like he's got something there. I'm not out on Josh Allen. I know you two aren't out on him as such, but looking at the quarterbacks in fantasy, there's just something that always draws me into Josh Allen, and it will continue. I will draft him as my quarterback one if he is there and available at kind of the right spot.
I think the only way I can describe it and the way I was thinking about Josh Allen is we've obviously just done the JTT Cup draft, and I was number 1 overall, and I very quickly narrowed it down to Josh Allen or CMC, and I looked at it and I was like, which one's likely? They were both, quarterback 1, running back 1, and quite easily last year. Which one's more likely to repeat? And I led towards McCaffrey. And you could argue that Bijan Robinson's got a good chance of claiming that. Breece Hall had a great finish to last year. We talked about Jahmyr Gibbs on the last episode. So that he's got competition in the same way Josh Allen's got competition, but just feel a little bit, injuries aside, obviously you've always got to use that caveat, just feel a little bit more confident in CMC repeating than I do Josh Allen. And I mean, Josh Allen's going to be a top 5 quarterback. So if you want to, if you're going to take him, you're getting a certain floor. He's not going to fall out of there. But he does worry me as potentially won't be as explosive as he's been for fantasy the last few years.
Well, yeah, like last year when you drafted, if you were drafting at 2 and the person before you took CMC, you take Josh Allen and you are feeling pretty smug about your draft because you've got Josh Allen. This year you take Josh Allen at 1 or 2. You're nowhere near as smug as you were last year.
No, there's that little element of just being worried. On the flip side, I really want some James Cook in my teams because I feel like as the year went on last year, he finally got to the point. I think I mentioned on a previous pod, he's still only got like 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 years combined. He's got some really strange touchdown odds, touchdown stats. Sorry, but I just feel like with Diggs and Davis gone, and then a little bit uncertainty at wide receiver, I could feel like he's the one who might benefit from it.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm high on Cook this year. I think that I was quite high on him last year, weirdly, but I'm even higher on him this year. I think he is going to have a good year. He is a pass catching running back as well, so that always plays a big part in there. So yeah, I'm high on Cook this year.
Do you know, you're high on a lot of players. Considering you come out of a few drafts and you go, I wasn't happy with how that went. I was like, how have you managed that when you're high on so many players?
There will be a point where I will just go, nope, not for me. I think there's there's been a few so far where I've gone, I'm out on. But where he is ADP wise, there's probably so I think we mentioned it on the last pod. It's Mixon, Cook, and Walker that are sort of those three of those three. If you got one of them as your what should be your RB2, I think there's an awesome place or an awesome player to have as your running back too. Because realistically, you're probably going to be aiming for your CMC, Bijan, Breece Hall, and all them. And then when you come back on the swing to take a James Cook, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, you're happy, you're laughing. You got a good running back base.
Yeah, I like James Cook this year. I mean, you just talked about wide receivers. Are we any one of those three that you feel like strongly gambling on?
It's got to be Keon Coleman, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'd of the three, it'd be Coleman.
I mean,
just because he's a
we've
little
seen
bit
what
of an
Shakir
unknown.
does. We've seen what Curtis Samuel does, and
to be honest,
they've never been relevant, have they?
I love that as an argument. I mean, I love the argument is we haven't seen what he can do, so there's a chance he could be brilliant. So yeah. I mean, Curtis Samuel could be solid. He'll probably outdo a wide receiver 51. I mean, he was wide receiver 42 last year, but if he finishes wide receiver 42, you can sit there and go, well, I beat his ADP. He's not going to win you a championship, is he? He's not going to win you any leagues. And it's the same with Shakir. If he finishes as wide receiver 35 or wide receiver 40, he's not going to win you any leagues. So Coleman's the one.
Sorry, Pete. Sorry to interrupt that. I think one of the gambles with Shakir is based off how well he played at the end of last year when Allen and Diggs had obviously had their kind of fallout and their whatever it was. Shakir seemed to step up quite a bit. I reckon of the 600 yards he got last year, I reckon probably 200 of that came in the last few weeks and he got a lot more targets. It may be that I'm falling for preseason hype, but there's something about having a franchise quarterback that it makes me more in on a player, and having a quarterback like Josh Allen. To be fair, same with we'll talk about it when we come to the division, but same with Pat Mahomes. Like I don't like the Chiefs receivers, but I'd take one because Pat Mahomes is the quarterback. Like that's
you can have Kadarius Toney in every league you want, mate. No problem.
Nah, but
leave him for the last round. You can take him in the last round.
I won't be. But like when you look at certain teams and the way certain like quarterbacks play, they do make that player more interesting. I mean, I've taken Shakir in 3 best ball leagues this year because I feel like it's a good pick for best ball because we kind of don't know what we're going to get with him. If it was a redraft, though, it's probably going to be Keon Coleman over him because I feel like Keon Coleman's probably that. One, he's a big red zone target. He's like 6'4" or something like that. He's a big lad. Like he's not. He's not a small dude. Like he's going to be a big target in there, and that for when you're drafting and redraft, and if someone like that falls to you, you kind of more in on them because he's not 5'10" and skinny. So yeah, bit of a weird one. I'm not as high on Kincaid though. Just going to throw that one out there. I am high on Kincaid, but not Titan 5 high.
No, it's Kincaid or bust for the Bills. Kincaid is being spammed.
Yeah. I do think he will get a lot more targets, but I feel like 5 at tight end's a little bit high.
Kincaid got 91 targets last year. He's definitely going over 100.
I've been up and down on Kincaid. There's been leagues where I've taken him. I've done quite a lot of drafting. I'm in far too many leagues now. I've done quite a lot of drafting across the spring and summer. And they've been really in on him. I've been a bit more cautious about him. And I think my only concern is Dawson Knox is done as a fantasy player, I think, unless Kincaid gets injured.
Which is a shame because I really like Dawson Knox.
I thought he was a good player.
My concern about Kincaid is when you look more into his stats, Kincaid had his best games when Dawson Knox wasn't on the field. So my concern is if Dawson Knox is healthy and they're both on the field a bit more often than you would potentially like, it's not, does Dawson Knox get to a level where you can pick him, but does he take enough of the attention away from Kincaid? Does he take enough targets off Kincaid that he stops him being a top 5 tight end at the end of the year? That's my only concern. Other than that, I think he should quite easily be the number 1 target and on a really good offense, and he should be a good pick.
I'm not saying he's going to be a bad pick. I just feel like 5 may be a little high. That's just personal opinion on him, though. That's all.
I'll wrap it up. H pressing the button. That's what we'll wrap it up with.
Sorry.
I was just going to say.
He was going like that or making a gesture to say.
I was doing.
Oh, my bad. See what happens when H gets the buttons for a week.
H is in charge of running the show tonight, and so far it's going swimmingly. The only thing I was going to say was James Cook is 5-4 to have 1,000 rushing yards, which seems like easy money to me. There's no way. If he stays fit, there's no way he doesn't get to 1,000. What's 1,000 yards now? Like 70 a game?
Something like that.
He'll get there. That's it.
Did it at the right point then?
He's pressed the button again.
He's gone.
If you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening rather than watching on YouTube, this isn't going to make a lot of sense. I encourage you to at least just go onto YouTube and watch the last 5 or 6 minutes again. So second in the division was the Miami Dolphins, who started like a train, went off as if they were on fire, and stumbled towards the end. Apparently, they don't like playing in colder conditions, which is going to be a bit of a problem because the season's always going to finish in January.
Well, no. The reason they stumbled, and it's also the reason, going back to the last section, why I'm down on the Bills, is they signed Chase Claypool.
Leave him alone.
All about Chase. Well,
I've got the Bills not making the playoffs this year, and it's mainly Chase Claypool related.
All chill because of Chase Claypool. So they did finish 11-6, but having lost to the Bills at the end of the season, that wasn't enough to grab the division title. Their last division title was in 2008. Obviously, a division dominated by the Patriots for many years, and now the Bills have taken over. They did make the playoffs with an 11-6 record, but they lost to the Chiefs 26-7 in weather that was not conducive to Miami playing conditions. 2024, they are put in at 9.5 wins, second favorite for the division, but there's very little in it. They are like just behind the Bills in terms of favorites for the divisions. I couldn't find any notable outs, although Ian's just made a point of Chase Claypool left, and therefore that just instantly makes them better.
Turns their year around also straight away.
Their ins. OBJ has still got a job despite not doing anything for several years. Jonnu Smith has become in at tight end, who we were talking about off the pod, that I got stolen away from me in the JTT Cup, and I was upset about it. And noticeable, they've got another speed merchant in at running back with Jalen Wright in the 4th round to add to the 2 that they already had. Early ADPs, Tua is going as the quarterback 13. He was last year's QB 9. Achane is going as the RB 9. He was last year's RB 24, but only played 11 games. Mostert was he's going all the way down at RB 25, despite finishing as RB 5 last year. He was actually RB 2 in half PPR if you play that instead of full PPR. Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 2, having finished as a wide receiver 2. Jalen Waddle is the wide receiver 19. And Jonnu Smith is the tight end 26. So not really relevant in redraft. That's a lot of information I've just read through. And let's start with Achane, because he's the one, or let's start with the running backs. Achane's the one where I'm like, he's not going to end up on any of my teams. And because he's going too high. And I think I mentioned this on a previous pod. He's one of those players where I don't really have any interest in having him on any of my teams. But as soon as I see he's on the opposition team against me, I'm absolutely terrified. So it's this like weird combination of me not actually wanting to draft him, but also not come up against him because I know he could go off for 35 points and destroy me.
Yeah, he is one of those players, isn't he? I mean, I think we are going to see that regression from Mostert, aren't we? Like he is old.
That's a lot. Yeah, but he's only roughly 12 months older than he was this time last year. and he just put up a really good season. You could have made that argument last year.
Life comes at you fast when you're Mostert's age.
As we all know at this point.
Yeah, after
Yeah.
I'm literally
10
most
years older.
age. Cheers for that.
Yeah, we've seen how your life's going.
Yeah. Cheers, pal.
He's not. You're definitely not as quick as Mostert. So,
No, you're definitely right with that one.
do you not think he's fallen a bit far?
For RB5 last year, yeah. As
places.
Yeah, as good as the other two could be and maybe, neither. Well, I know Jalen Wright wasn't in the league, but no, Achan didn't dislodge Mostert as RB1 there last year. I see the upside of Achan, I really do, but I'm very much like you, Pete. I'm not drafting him. It's one of those players that I like him as a best ball option, which shock. But
Yeah.
I can't
anyone
pull the trigger on
anyone in the
redraft.
top 300, H likes the best ball prospects.
No, there isn't. There's a lot that I don't like. But no, there's something about Achan where I feel like it's like what we were talking about. Like he's one of them players that he can win you a game, but he can also cost you a lot. Like he will go 30 points one week and then next to nothing. Like he had the 2 games where Mostert was injured and he didn't put up the numbers or didn't have great games from what I remember. Like I just feel like he's an impact. He's not. I don't know. There's something about him that I can't get him in a redraft, which is probably why I'm going to get battered in redraft this year.
I think the thing that worries me is durability. And it's all right. You can easily go from one year to the next and go, well, that player got. I remember Keenan Allen used to get injured quite a lot, and then he just played 4 years without getting any injuries. But the difference between Achan and other players, done it in the past, CMC being a prime example, is he's not built. He just doesn't look like he's built for the NFL. He's not big enough. And you are. I mean, if you are that size, you are. Unless you evade tackles completely, you are going to get hurt at some point. So he's not going. That for me, I know he's going to be impactful when he plays, but he's not going to play. He's not going to play 17 games.
On that, so the reason that he was quite a bit slimmer was he was still training for track at the time. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of him this off season, but he's a very well chiseled man now. Let's put it that way. Like he's had an off season where it looks like he's put on a bit of weight and more muscle than like any kind of fat. It'd be interesting to see.
So he's come back as Raheem Mostert then, yeah.
pretty
Is
much.
that where we're going, yeah.
But I think one of the other things with the Dolphins is it comes from like the San Fran side of things with before they got CMC, but they were always running back by committee. And I feel like it's going to continue here. I don't see how it doesn't continue.
Yeah, but that can work. We talked about that with the Lions.
100% it can work.
None of us were complaining about Gibbs or Montgomery's ADP. No. So there's no reason why they can't both deliver on those ADPs. And I still think Mostert can finish above that. They could both finish in the top 16.
Yeah, I think Jalen Wright will impact that massively.
I see Jalen Wright at some point being more involved.
Yeah, because last year it was just Achan and Mostert. Jalen Wright is a genuine threat to take reps off both of those players. Mainly Mostert, but he will be taking opportunity away from Achan as well.
I think Jalen Wright is the long term.
It just muddies the water.
Yeah. I think Jalen Wright was selected for the long term replacement for Mostert with him and Achan. That's how I've looked at that draft pick.
Yeah. But it's going to be 50% Achan, 30% Mostert, 20% Jalen Wright.
100% Power and Fame, whatever the song goes. Yeah. Can't remember.
Tua, QB 13. is ending up on an unnerving amount of my rosters. So I think the two quarterbacks I've ended up with the most are Tua and Derek Carr. That's it. They're the
Right.
two, which is not two that you really want. And this is like bigger rosters, best ball, and everything else. Although both of those are on my dynasty team. I'm not sure I want to go into next year relying heavily on Tua and Derek Carr having big seasons, but that's where I'm at in the back end of July.
Well, it depends on where you're at with Tyreek Hill, doesn't it? Like nearly 18. He was 1 yard short of 1,800 yards last year. Jalen Waddle was over 1,000. Tua passed for 4,624. You know, he could pass for 5,000 yards this year.
Yeah.
So
the thing with Tua,
I like Tua this year.
The thing with Tua, the thing that worries me about Tua is I think the yards will be there because effectively he just has to dump it off to like one of those 3 speed merchants and they take it for 50 yards anyway. He doesn't even have to throw the ball that far. He gets 50 yards. I agree with you. I think he could go for another 4,500 easily. He could potentially go for 5,000 yards. What needs to be there is a few more touchdowns. And there was games last year where, and I'll give you an example because, like I say, he's in my dynasty team, and I haven't got the stats off to hand. But when they blew the Broncos out, when they put 70 or 70 odd points past the Broncos, he sort of looked at his score and he got 20 odd fantasy points, and I was just like, how has that happened? How is he? But it's just like they get to a certain point where it's like if they're winning games, it's just like, right, we'll just let Mostert and Achane do the rest. And there was a bit of they had some problems with their lines last year, especially the offensive line. There was a lot of changes. There was a lot of injuries on the offensive line. So they can fix that. Hopefully he'll repay me on my loyalty to him across the summer.
Yeah, I think like he passed for 29 touchdowns. The worrying stat if you draft in Tua is that he rushed for 0. He didn't get a single rushing touchdown last year, which is not great for your fantasy stats, is it? Like you want a couple, don't you?
Yeah.
Like even Cousins will get a couple.
Do you know what? I was about to say exactly the same thing. Even Kirk Cousins is good for one.
Even Kirk Cousins will get a couple. Derek Carr will get a couple. And Tua's what, 25, 26 years old?
Yeah.
I'll take hits though, can he?
Well, you want at least a couple of rushing touchdowns off him.
Mm.
And then you feel way more comfortable having him in your team, don't you?
Yeah, I think, like I say though, I think the problem with Tua from a fantasy, it's not a problem from an NFL point of view, but from a fantasy point of view, is those running backs were too efficient last year. So they're not, your QB rushing touchdowns usually come from 3, 4, 5 yards out. They weren't getting to 5 yards out. They're running it in from 25 yards out. So, or Tyreek Hill's taking it to the house from 75 yards out. So it's just like he just throws the ball and then goes and sits back on the bench, or he hands it off and then goes and sits back on the bench. So, yeah, that's probably that is my only concern. But I do like Tua. I think he's kind of at least slightly underrated considering the numbers he put up last year.
Well, what surprised me was his completion rate. Like he's a 69.29% completion rate. I mean, that's unreal. That's more than Josh Allen. It's more than Mahomes, more than Hurts. Tua's passing accuracy last year was off the charts.
I read somewhere it's in the 70s in terms of 70%, it's over 70% if it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit or higher.
Well, this don't play him in the playoff game.
So you said before, like it's not Miami friendly conditions. When Miami purposely built a stadium where the away team sideline is in the sun.
Yeah.
So they have it half the year where it's perfectly for them, and they do their best to screw the other team over. So when they have to go and play in Buffalo in December, I don't care.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. We've got about a minute and a half. How are we feeling about Waddle this year?
I've always liked him, to be fair. So I've got pre-existing bias on Jalen Waddle. He did 1,014 yards, 4 touchdowns, which it's not great reading. 34 34 ranking. He needs to be better, and he is better than that.
He wasn't healthy last year, though.
No,
I think I've said this before. He was always in that 10. When you've got him in like one of your main leagues, I've got him in again. I have drafted him in a few places, but I had him in our dynasty league last year, and it's like so you're watching him a little bit closer, and it's like, oh, he's in the 10. And you're like, he's always in that flipping 10. So he needs if he stays healthy. I mean, he's proven in the past he's probably a top 15 wide receiver easily. So I'm expecting big things from him this year. Anything to add before we wrap up the Dolphins, H?
Not really. I feel like, in a weird way, I think probably Jonnu Smith might be someone to pick up as your, like, if you're absolutely desperate for a tight end too, Jonnu Smith. I feel like Jonnu Smith's going to be a waiver wire target at some point. I don't know why. Probably because. Yeah, well, yeah, there's that, but I feel like he's a player that you're gonna when your main tight end's out. I feel like he's going to be a player that you may look to. I feel like he may have a couple of good games where you go, he's my tight end there, and I feel like Tua's not had a tight end since Gesicki. I feel like he's not had a really somebody that you could rely on since Gesicki. I feel like that kind of affected him a little bit last year. Is it Smythe last year? He didn't really do much. Where you go, like that's a reliable tight end. Bit of a weird one, I suppose, but yeah, Jonnu Smith. Have a look.
Great. Third in was the New York Football Jets. 7-10, which is pretty impressive considering they spent 99% of the season with Zach Wilson at quarterback. No division, or in fact, they might have even dropped him at some point and brought somebody else in. No division title since 2002. I read somewhere they've only won 2 division titles since the merger, which is the lowest out of all the franchises in the NFL. So Jets fans have not had a lot to cheer about, or not in the last 30 years anyway. In 2024, they are very slightly third favourites. And literally, when you look at the odds, it's got Buffalo, Miami, New York, and they are like a smidgen between all of them. And then the fourth team that we'll get to in a minute. 9.5 wins for the season. A lot of this depending on Aaron Rodgers. Their major ins, Tyrod Taylor, and I only stuck him down there because if the same thing happens to Aaron Rodgers again, it feels like they've got a little bit better a backup than they had last year. Mike Williams, and then in the draft they picked up Malachi Corley, wide receiver, in the 3rd round. Right, Braylon Allen, running back, in the 4th, and Isaiah Davis. God, put your teeth in, Pete. Isaiah Davis, running back, in the 5th. Outs, Zach Wilson, Randall Cobb, and Uzama.
Didn't need to mention them outs.
Yeah, I didn't. But it's just worth mentioning that they're not there anymore. Might be a Claypool thing. Like Randall Cobb leaving's like one of those things where Aaron Rodgers doesn't have him to throw the ball to anymore, so he might focus on the better players. Early ADPs, Aaron Rodgers not really relevant as the quarterback 20. Breece Hall is very relevant as the best player, best running back in football as RB3. Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver 8. Mike Williams is wide receiver 56, and Tyler Conklin is the tight end 24. So, really, we're just talking about Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson.
I think we should talk about Mike Williams
Really?
at some point.
Okay.
We only played 3 games last year, didn't he? So we have to go historically.
But historically, he only plays 3 games. That's the problem, isn't it? So,
I'm sure that's a fallacy, But we'll talk about Breece Hall to begin with.
Yeah. Breece Hall started slowly, finished like a train because they just didn't trust the quarterback and just kept giving him the ball. So he ended up finishing as the RB2 last year. I think the only thing stopping Breece Hall is if Aaron Rodgers decides that he doesn't want to give it to his running back and actually wants to just throw it all over the park like it's 2019.
I feel like I should start with this because last year I said Breece Hall hadn't done anything, And at the time, I felt like this is the thing with it.
You got
is
abused for that as well.
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I felt like he had. I probably expected like kind of more at that point, and then I think he ripped like 2 lots of 50 points and like finished the season, won many divisions or titles for people, and I was like, that is what I expected of him kind of all year round, and I was probably like really critical of him because of that. I am if Brees Hall is there, just take him. Don't even hesitate. Just there's literally like there is CMC as a definite, and then I would say it's a toss up between him and Bijan for 2. I feel like Bijan's going to have a much better year, but Brees Hall has proven it, and he's proven it again. And even when you this is kind of what I was getting at. Even when you think he's not had a great year, he's had a great year, because that was kind of like one of the, like I said, with my point that I made last year is like I didn't think he was having a great year, and then in actual fact he was having a fantastic year. It's just probably because the Jets were so bad you weren't interested in them, I suppose. But
I reckon, H, you are the only person in the world that thought that Brees Hall was having a bad year last year.
Now, do you know what it was? And I will stick up for you a little bit. It was a bit up and down. Like there was times where you watched him, and it was like the offensive line was terrible, and they were just because he didn't have a quarterback who could make a play. They were just going, we'll just give it to Brees Hall, and the defense knew what was happening. It was like they're going to give it to Brees Hall, so he wasn't getting anywhere. Like there was just nothing there, and that's the thing this year is assuming Aaron Rodgers is healthy and he's the Aaron Rodgers from at least some point in the past, or at least half the player he used to be, then he can open that up a little bit more. Hopefully they've spent a lot of money in trying to improve the offensive line, so hopefully he comes into a situation where he doesn't have to have as many carries, he doesn't have to have as many opportunities, but he will make more of those opportunities, and he'll have more splash plays, and it'll just look like he's doing a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think Aaron. It's an obvious statement, this, but I think Aaron Rodgers is actually really key for Brees Hall this year. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers for me was so key to Garrett Wilson last year. I said Garrett Wilson would finish as wide receiver 3 last year because I am that high on Garrett Wilson, but 2, I felt like with a quarterback like Rodgers, Garrett Wilson would make a jump into those elites. Now, obviously, it didn't work out because he was only there for 3 snaps, and then it was Zach Wilson and whoever else got thrown in there. I think Tim Boyle might have been thrown in there. I can't even remember, but it was pretty tragic, and it kind of ruined any fun that you had for Garrett Wilson, but it also affected how you thought of Brees Hall. And I think Rodgers is key to both of those 2 players. And if Aaron Rodgers is the one that's throwing that ball, you automatically go, he could throw it anywhere. We don't know. We might need to take an extra man out of the box, even on those 50-50 plays. We'll take a chance that he's throwing it, and Brees Hall's going to breeze through you.
Yeah. Can Brees Hall finish as the number 1 running back overall?
No.
Why not?
I'll back it up in a minute after H gives his 2 cents worth.
I feel that he could, but I don't. I feel like CMC is a class above, and it will be ridiculous for someone to knock him off the throne.
Okay.
So here's my opinion, and I'm gonna knock on Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson here. So Brees Hall was running back 2 last year, and this is mainly off 591 receiving yards off 76 catches. He got 95 targets last year, which is a target share that not many wide receiver twos get. Now, the Jets have gone out and got Mike Williams, they've got Malachi Corley. There is no way Breece Hall's getting 95 targets again this year. He's going to lose at least 30 of those, I reckon, if it's Rodgers playing under center.
Maybe.
So that's gonna massively impact his ability to score for fantasy. So it will affect Breece Hall. Now, what worries me about Garrett Wilson is that, and I am taking this with a pinch of salt because I know it was at Wilson and Tim Boyle, but he had 168 targets last year, and he only caught 95 of them, which is a 56% catch rate.
So on that, there is a few. There's being targeted, and then there's being targeted.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
Garrett Wilson didn't drop
there is an element
many.
of Garrett Wilson's somewhere there.
Yeah,
just throw it somewhere, and Garrett Wilson is around that area. I get that.
I feel like with a
but if you're taking a receiver and he gets 10 targets a game and he only catches 5.5 of them, you are worried.
But I said, this is why Rodgers is key to both of them. Because
yeah.
Like the quarterbacks Wilson played with last year were absolute trash. There's a reason that, well, one of them's got traded and one of them's not even on a roster, or he may have snuck in as a quarterback 3. Like, Rodgers will definitely make the Jets a better team, but he will also make Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson better players.
No, I agree with Garrett Wilson. I mean, obviously, like I said at the start, that 56.5% pinch of salt, look who's throwing in the ball. Yeah. There is an element, we're chasing the game, just send it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Garrett Wilson will have a better year than he did last year, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Breece Hall, however, I don't think will perform to the same level as he did last year, because Mike Williams and Malachi Corley are going to take those targets away from him.
My only argument against that would be that 95 seems high, but in the last 2 years, McCaffrey's averaged about 95. And he plays in a team with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, all of whom you could argue are better than everything that the Jets have got.
I agree, but that's a Shanahan offense, isn't it? Though that's what he does.
Yeah, I'm like, but Breece Hall, like, if you're looking, Mike Williams will be off to the side in the injury room.
Right, well, while we're on that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I said I'm pretty sure it's a fallacy. Mike Williams, other than his rookie year, has never played less than 13 games in a season.
And last year.
Well, yeah, obviously last year, yeah. But prior to last year, he's never played less than 13 games.
How many years is that?
His rookie year was 2017, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4,
wow.
5 years.
7.
5 years. He's done 16, 15, 15, 16, 13, 3. Granted, he's not done much with that. His highest finish is a 9, and his second highest is 21. So it's not, he's not setting records. However, Mike Williams has got those 25, 30 point games in his locker.
Did you have a point to make, H?
No, go on, mate. You go.
So the only other point I wanted to make about the Jets, and I've convinced myself that I'm not getting excited about the Jets this year. I don't want to put them down. I don't want to do it. I don't want to bring any doom. But my one concern I would have about the Jets is Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers, and I think the injury from last year has shadowed over the fact that the year before he had one of his worst years that he'd ever had. So fantasy points wise, I'm just, we're a fantasy podcast, so I'm using this as an example just to make my point. In 2022, he finished as the quarterback 13 and averaged 17.1 points per game. In the same season, Derek Carr averaged 18.5 points per game in his terrible last year with the Raiders. That's how good Aaron Rodgers was that year. Even last year, Derek Carr averaged 17 points a game, which is exactly the same as what Aaron Rodgers was. So the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers, who was like the Hall of Fame version, was 2021. And since then, he's had his 40th birthday and torn his Achilles. So when you add all of that up, that's quite. I mean, he could come out. He doesn't have to be the Hall of Fame version. To make the Jets better, he just has to be able to throw a football because in the general direction of Garrett Wilson. But it would, if you were tempering expectations a little bit, which the bookie, like I said, the bookies have got them at 9.5 wins, which is more than they've had for several years. They're a very, very short very short third favorite as third favorites go for the division. It's like everyone seems to be tempering the fact that he could come back and be brilliant and really get them going. I'm just not sure he's one, got the weapons, or two, he's going to be the same player.
I think in terms of fantasy, if you're struggling for a quarterback and you're looking on the waiver wire and you want to pick up a quarterback that just won't embarrass you, Aaron Rodgers is a safe bet. He probably won't ever embarrass you in any game week. He also won't win you any game weeks. He'll just make sure that you stay relatively competitive. Yeah,
it was less of a fantasy take and more of a.
If you want my real world take on Aaron Rodgers, we'll have to start a new podcast because that guy is an idiot.
We'll do a side pod, which I think we should start doing, by the way. It's a conversation, bro. We should do mini pods just to get.
Where I can swear and let the real Ian out.
No, not necessarily, because we're a professional outfit. But at the same time, in case you had noticed,
2/3 of a professional outfit.
Who's that dig at?
Me.
In case you had noticed, we're a professional outfit. But that said, doesn't mean we can't do like mini pods where you could just have a go at Aaron Rodgers if you want. Right? Should we talk about the? Should we talk? Really well.
He was just going into quarter three. You didn't even give me a nod.
All I hope when we do these, all I hope is the people listening and the people watching enjoy it just half as much as we enjoy doing them, because at least tonight they'll be having a great time. So
I can't believe you trusted me with the buttons. Like, this is just ludicrous.
I think you're doing very well, Age.
To be fair, he was about to start quarter four, so I was right to throw it in there and interrupt him. It's what you do to me. So
this is like pre-season for us. This is the Hall of Fame game, or like the first pre-season game where we're trying something new and we'll see if it works.
The B team's out.
We should have done a walkthrough, shouldn't we?
Yeah, the signal's better, so that's working. We just need to get you a little bit more on it with the buttons. Anyway. Thanks for sticking with us for the best part of 50 minutes. If you don't want to listen to the next 15, I do not blame you in the slightest, because this is going to be hard work. But here we go anyway.
Can we talk about Ramondre Stevenson for 15 minutes?
Yeah, the Patriots finished fourth with a record of 4-13. The biggest change in the Patriots is the new coaching staff for the first time since the year 2000, which, when you think about it, is mind-blowing. I was still at school, for starters. 2024, they are forecast 4.5 wins, which seems low, but they might not make it.
Right, I'll tell you what, while we're on that, let's stop on that, shall we?
Yeah.
So I've got them winning none.
They're going to find a few wins. There's no way
they will obviously find a win from somewhere, but let me read out their fixtures and you stop me when you think they're going to win a game. And don't stop me at week 1 because it's Bengals.
Yeah, that one.
Stop. There you go. Let's move on.
Right. Bengals.
Back to you.
Seahawks.
Home or away?
At home.
That could be it.
At the Niners. Dolphins. Texans. At the Jags. Jets. At the Titans, which could be it.
Could be that.
At the Bears, Rams, at Dolphins, Colts, Cardinals.
That one.
At the Cardinals.
Just find a pit.
At the Bills, Chargers, at home to the Bills.
It's a tough schedule.
They are struggling to get a win there.
It is a tough schedule, but it's a tough schedule because we don't like the Patriots and we don't think there's a lot to them. So, like the Cardinals,
I did that as objectively as possible. Like, the Titans and Cardinals, maybe the Seahawks. I don't know.
You've gone
The
0.
Cardinals, to be fair, sorry.
But
You've got
collectively, we
0.
agree it's under 4.5, don't we?
Yeah. You've gone 0. We all know it won't be 0. But that said, they are. I did read that they're underdogs in every single game. So Vegas already has the odds out for every game, and they are like the underdog.
I know
Or
Vegas
second
asked me. Vegas called me
second
up.
favorite, depending on which way you look at it. Right, where was that? Right, so odds for the division, they are expected to finish. They're expected to finish 4th. They are 28 to 1 shots, which is the longest odds of any team to win their division, which obviously comes into the fact that the other 3 are quite highly rated. Notable ins: Jacoby Brissett, Antonio Gibson, KJ Osborne, Austin Hooper, and then the draft they brought in Drake May, number 3 overall, Jalen. That's easier to say. Let's say that. Jalen Polk in the 2nd round and Javon Baker in the 4th. Notable outs: Mac Jones' era is over. Zeke is no longer there. Devontae Parker, who feels like he's been there for about 15 years, is no longer there. And Mike Gesicki has moved on to another team. The one thing I would say about that before I get on to ADPs is they've really had a go at trying to improve the roster, at least, especially on offense. It's like, right, well, let's bring in they brought in an experienced quarterback. They've drafted very highly a rookie quarterback that we already know H is very high on. Antonio Gibson to support Stevenson. KJ Osborne did stuff for the Vikings. So they have really tried. They've gone out and brought a couple of rookies, wide receivers. So they are trying. And that's where I kind of feel like they'll surprise a few teams. I'm going potentially week 2. They'll maybe surprise the Seahawks. ADPs are kind of pointless because other than Ramondre Stevenson, they just don't matter. Drake May is quarterback 26. Briskett's quarterback 37. Stevenson's running back 22, having finished at running back 35 last year, only through 12 games. Gibson's running back 50. Polk's wide receiver 67. Douglas is 72. And Baker's 83. Hunter Henry is too low at tight end 22. And that's about it.
Yeah, Hunter Henry is too low because he finished 19 last year in a terrible offense, and he only played 14 games.
Yeah.
So Hunter Henry at 22 is way too low. Because if he plays,
he's not going to be a top 5 tight end, but he's
not be a top 5 at tight end, no. But he's not going to be relevant for 8-team leagues either.
Going back to H's point about Jonnu Smith, I feel like at some point next year we're all going to be sat looking at the waiver wire going, I need a tight end, and it's Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry. He's going to be one of those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's in that same bracket, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just get on with it then. How are we feeling about Ramondre Stevenson having had a bad year, but then new coaching staff, and he's just been given a ton of money?
So I feel like I feel like he's a better running back. I can't get my words out. Sorry. I feel like he's a better running back than 22. I've drafted him where he's like I think he's probably like my 3rd or my 4th running back, and I'm really happy that because the thing with him is he's going to lose a few. I feel like he's going to lose a few of his drop off targets to Gibson this year. I feel because Gibson is a running back that will come in as a pass catching running back. So I feel like he's not going to be a full three down back this year. The one thing that I always
just paid him like a 3 down back.
Yeah, but like I feel like when a rookie quarterback comes in, you need the strong running back, and that's why I'm probably a little bit higher on him. He's just in a really bad team. I think that's the killer with it. It's
the issue was hang on a second. Sorry, because last year they were a really bad team.
Yeah.
This year we haven't got a clue what they're going to be.
No.
We have got absolutely zero idea what they're going to be this year. Like all the coaching staff are new. They've got a offensive coordinator who's first year in the job or first year is taking charge. They got a rookie quarterback in Drake May. They even backed Drake May up with another quarterback in Joe Milton in a later round as well. So They've done what Pete likes to do. Whereas if you're not sure what quarterback to pick, just pick loads. Because quarterbacks coming into the NFL don't always work out.
You could argue that with Washington, though. Washington picked up the Notre Dame quarterback. It's just I look at that differently.
Washington weren't horrific last year, were they?
No, but the thing is, the Patriots' defense, like if you look at some of the games that they played last year, their defense kept them in the game, and they only needed a little bit of offense to get a couple of wins. And no one going away from fantasy football, but their D is quite strong. It's quite a good sort of group, and they've kept the core of that, but they've made big changes on the offense. And the thing is, there's too many rookies in there for you to go, this is going to be brilliant this year. I feel like there's too many where you can't, two wide receivers that come in potentially are better than what they had last year. The two quarterbacks that they've got, or three quarterbacks that they've got in, are better than what they had last year, potentially. I know I'm obviously huge on Drake May, but I'm not drafting him. I'm not drafting him in fantasy football this year, unless it's a dynasty. But I'd also consider Jaden Daniels in fantasy football over him. I just feel like
Jaden Daniels absolutely has to go over Drake May in fantasy.
Yeah,
absolutely has to.
Because he's in a way better landing spot, and there's a lot to it. Jaden Daniels rushes, Drake May doesn't really. There's just with the Pat. I don't think the Pats are going to win many games this year. I don't think they're going to be a great team to watch. I'm not saying that.
Oh, I disagree. I think they'll be brilliant to watch. They might not be a good team, but I reckon they'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it all works, and I feel like at some point one of the offense that we've all kind of written off is going to be a target where everyone's like, oh, that could be the guy, and I don't know who it's going to be. I feel like it, although it should be Polk. I feel like I'm more confident in Baker, but that's because I really enjoyed Baker in college. It's a weird team to predict.
It might be Pop Douglas. Everyone's forgetting that he's to be there. Well, there was games last year. Sorry, Pete. Just while we're having a conversation. Sorry. Like you mentioned, the Patriots D. There were games last year where the Patriots D were on the sidelines going, "You only need to get 10 points. Yeah. Just get us 10 points," and they couldn't. And if they can do that this year, the Patriots have got a chance. And I know I'm arguing against myself because I've got them down for 0 wins. But we've just said they'll get wins from somewhere. And if their D is just as good as it has been historically, they might have an offense that can get 10 points.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing. Like it's not fantasy relevant, kind of what we're saying here.
No, it's definitely not.
It's they can get wins just by being that little bit better. Mm-hmm. And I feel like especially their offense, I feel like they've done the moves where they could be better. I almost should be better. They draft a quarterback, they draft a wide receiver 1. They draft probably a wide receiver 2/3, depending on how you're looking at it. They give Hunter Henry the tight end room to himself, kind of, which I actually agreed with. I feel like moving on from Gesicki was probably a good thing for Hunter Henry, and I kind of agree with your point. He should be a little bit higher this year than he is. They've improved the running back room in terms of swapping Gibson for Elliott, because Elliott was on a massive decline. I'm not drafting any of them, don't get me wrong, but in terms of football, I feel like they'll maybe be a little bit better, but I still don't see them winning many games. And like I say, I'm not drafting any other than Stevenson.
Fair enough.
The only thing
I very rudely cut you off.
That's all right. It wasn't rude at all, mate. The only thing I would add to that is if they're winning games 10-7, that's not very entertaining to watch. So
No.
you contradicted yourself a little bit.
I have.
And I'll just throw one thing that I read on, like, obviously we're in hype season and all that sort of stuff. But the one thing I had read on Twitter, there was that KJ Osborne had established himself as the number one wide receiver in the room, which, considering he's sort of already proven he's not that great, isn't a great sign for the Patriots, is it?
Fantastic news.
At times he was wide receiver 2 at the Vikings, but yeah, there's not a lot there. Like
That's the worst silver lining ever.
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive for the Patriots fans. I'm trying to say it's not over yet. But yeah, it's not a fun division.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't done 15 minutes, but I haven't really got anything else to say on the Patriots. So unless either of you've got anything to add,
we're just over an hour, so that's perfect.
I tell you what we will do before we finish up. How have you got this division? How do you see this division finishing up?
The Dolphins winning the division, Jets second, Bills third, Patriots last.
I would take a gamble that the Bills win it again, but it's just because I think the Bills are like one of those teams that you kind of fall in love with a little bit. I think it finishes exactly the way it did last year, but I think it's going to be really close all the way through. I don't know sort of schedules and stuff like that though, so but I would say, I don't know, I'm going Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Pats, but Pats a long way off.
I'm gonna go a mixture of both of them. I think the Dolphins will win the division, but I think the Bills will run them close. I just got a feeling Mike McDaniel will get it right this time round. I think they did enough. He shows enough that I think they'll do enough to get enough wins, and I think the Bills will just fall short. But I think they will both finish ahead of the Jets. I think the Jets will be I think the Jets will be better. They'll be more fun to watch. They'll be more competitive. I think they've got a load of primetime games again this year. In fact, they're on the Monday Night Football in week 1 which seems like a disaster after last year. But I think they'll be more fun to watch and it'll be better. But I think they'll finish with like 9-8, something like that. It just won't. And the other two will get to 10 or 11, and the Patriots will be back on 3 wins.
I feel like it's the Dolphins, Bills is the two that I can't call. I feel like the Dolphins and the Bills lost a lot of big players, but they also seem to replace them quite well. Both, I mean, offensively, you can argue no Diggs, no Davis. We don't know what Samuel and Keon Coleman are going to look like. We don't know what Kincaid's going to look like. But the Dolphins also lost a lot of players on defense. So did the Bills, and they both kind of sorted things out. The Dolphins improved probably the most on offense, though, which is mental because they're like a freaky kind of team anyway. But and I know you two will laugh at it, but Odell as your wide receiver 3 isn't a bad player. He got 700 yards, or just short of 700 yards last year.
I'm going to cut you off there. Yeah. You can have your. We'll do your own. You can have your own side about OBJ. Well,
no, it's not. It's not that. It's, they didn't have a wide receiver 3 last year,
and they still haven't got one.
Oh, he's okay. We'll finish it there. Let me hit another button. Sorry.
As always.
Oh.
Finish. As always, follow us on all the social channels at JMD Pod. Comment on when we put the posts up. Have a comment on there. Tell us what you think of these episodes. Are they useful? Are you finding anything interesting? Do you think we're all just full of crap? And thanks again for listening, and look out for the next episode.